Hello friends, how are you? Do you think you could survive a frosty night in medieval England? Do you think so? Well, first listen to the story and then make predictions. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Write in the comments which country you are watching the video from. We would be very interested. Well, let's get started. Close your eyes. Let the hum of the modern world slip away until only the whisper of wind beneath a crooked thatched roof remains. Tonight, I'll take you back to a night when warmth was a rumor and survival was a quiet prayer. Here in a forgotten corner of medieval England, there are no roaring hearths, no feasts, no stone castles lit by torches. Only damp straw, smoke-soaked cloth, and a cold that bites straight through bone. The hut creaks softly as the wind presses against its thin walls. Your blanket, little more than a patched scrap of wool, does nothing to hold the warmth. The straw beneath you crackles faintly as you shift, flattened from too many nights of restless turning. Beside you, your younger sister curls into herself, her small breaths shallow, her knees drawn tight beneath her chin. You pull the rough edge of the blanket over her shoulder, though it offers almost nothing. Somewhere beyond the crooked door, a rooster cries too early, its hoarse crow breaking the silence like a cracked bell. The sound drifts through the sleeping village, carried across roofs soaked with mist. A dog barks once, sharp and hollow, before going silent, as though even it fears the cold. You breathe slowly, tasting the air. Damp straw, old ash, and the sourness of sweat that no stream could wash away in winter. The walls breathe too, whistling softly where the wind slips between uneven boards. Every sound feels louder in the darkness. The faint creak of roof beams, the soft rustle of mice hunting for crumbs, the hushed sighs of your mother by the hearth as she tends the fading embers. She crouches low, her fingers coaxing thin twigs into a nest, begging the stubborn fire to remember its duty. The sparks hiss but do not catch. Behind her, your father sits on a low stool, sharpening the edge of an old knife on a whetstone worn thin from years of work. His face is hidden in shadow, but the steady rhythm of steel against stone tells you what he does not. He is listening. Beyond the yard, something stirs. The dog growls low this time, a rumble so soft it barely carries above the wind. You hold your breath, straining to hear what he hears. A scrape of wood, a muffled thud, then silence. The chicken coop rattles faintly, feathers brushing against the planks inside. Your father stops sharpening the knife. The sound of the stone dies. Slowly, silently, he stands, his shadow stretching across the dirt floor. He gestures for you to stay still. The frost outside waits. The wind slips through the cracks in the hut, carrying with it the brittle taste of frost. It snakes along the floor, curling around your bare toes until they burn from the cold. You draw your knees closer to your chest, trying to make yourself smaller, quieter. Beside you, your sister stirs in her sleep, a soft whimper escaping her lips. You press a hand gently against her shoulder, whispering nothing but warmth, though the night offers none. By the hearth, your mother finally coaxes a faint flame from the stubborn embers. It catches on a strip of bark, then crawls along a splinter of kindling, spreading fragile light across the hut. The shadows it casts are long, restless, stretching into the corners where mice rustle under the straw. She leans close, shielding the flame with her palm as though afraid the cold might snuff it out. Your father moves toward the door without a sound. His knife glints dully in the flicker of firelight, the edge newly sharpened though pitted with age. He rests his hand on the rough wooden bar that holds the door shut, waiting, listening. Outside, the dog growls again, lower now, shorter, then stops altogether. That silence makes your stomach knot tighter than hunger ever could. You hear it then, a faint shuffle in the yard, the soft crunch of frozen earth beneath careful feet. Whoever or whatever it is moves slowly, circling, measuring each step. The hairs along your arms rise as you hold your breath, counting the spaces between each sound. The chicken coop rattles again, this time harder. Feathers explode inside, muffled clucks breaking into short, panicked cries. Your mother lifts her head sharply, eyes meeting your father's. No words pass between them, only understanding. A wolf, or more than one. Your father steps back from the door and gestures toward the hearth. His voice is low, almost a growl itself. Keep the fire alive. You scramble closer to the embers, feeding them small sticks one by one, afraid the sound of snapping wood might carry beyond the walls. Your mother pulls your sister into her lap, holding her tightly as she stirs awake, frightened but silent. Outside, the dog barks once high and sharp, then there's a yelp, sudden and cut short. The yard falls silent again. You freeze, fingers hovering over the flames, feeling the heat on your knuckles but none of it reaching your skin. Somewhere in the dark, paws press into frost. Something paces just beyond the threshold, close enough for the sound to travel through the boards beneath your feet. Your father doesn't move. He stands with his back to the door, knife ready, waiting. The hut holds its breath with you. Even the fire seems afraid to crackle too loudly. Then from far off, a long, hollow howl spills through the night, carried on the wind from the forest's edge. Another answers closer, sharp and quick, followed by a third, nearer still. The pack is hunting. Your father slowly kneels, sets the knife on the dirt beside him, and reaches for the heavy oak beam lying against the wall. You've seen him lift it before once, twice, but tonight it looks heavier than stone, heavier than the silence pressing against the walls. The wolves are at the door now. The silence presses harder now, heavier than the roof beams above your head. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. You sit frozen by the hearth, the weak fire flickering shadows across the damp walls, your hands resting just above the faint heat as though you could trap it in your palms. Behind you, your sister buries her face into your mother's shawl, her small shoulders trembling with each shallow breath. Your father lowers the oak beam into place, sliding it across the door's frame until the wood groans softly. The latch won't hold forever, not against teeth, not against hunger, but it's all you have. He glances at you briefly, his eyes reflecting the firelight like wet stone, then turns his gaze back to the crooked door. He doesn't blink. Outside something moves, a soft crunch, then another, closer now. You picture paw prints in the frost, circling, pausing, testing. The dog is silent, too silent, and that absence speaks louder than any bark could. The world beyond these walls has narrowed to breath and waiting. Then it comes. A long, hollow howl, stretched thin by distance and hunger, seeping through the cracks of the hut like cold mist. Another follows, closer, answered by a third, deep, guttural, carrying the weight of bone and blood. Your sister stirs, whispering into your mother's chest, her words broken by fear. Are they here? Your mother hushes her, fingers tightening around her thin shoulders, but she says nothing. Words have no warmth tonight. A sudden crash snaps the silence apart. The chicken coop slams against its frame. Feathers burst into the air and panicked squawks slice through the night. You flinch instinctively, your body jerking toward the sound, but your father's hand rises sharply, commanding stillness. Something snarls low, rumbling just beyond the door. The boards tremble faintly beneath its weight as claws scrape across the frozen earth. A muffled yelp follows, shorter this time, sharper. The wolves are fighting over something, maybe one of the chickens, maybe each other, but you can't tell. You can only hear teeth and frost and hunger tearing at the silence. Your father moves to the hearth and grabs a charred stick from the fire. It glows faintly at the tip, smoke curling around his fingers as he holds it high. His voice is low, quiet, meant only for you. If they come to the door, light will drive them back. But we'll need more fire. You nod quickly, shoving small branches and straw into the embers until the flames cough themselves higher. Sparks spit into the air, stinging your hands, but you ignore them. You lean close, blowing gently, coaxing the fire like a living thing, begging it to breathe louder than the wolves outside. Another thud shakes the wall, this time closer, this time heavier. The shadow passes over the gap beneath the door, blotting out the thin thread of moonlight that slips through the cracks. Something is there, something waiting. Then, without warning, a second howl bursts behind the hut, sharp and violent, and the sound of paws scatters across the frost in every direction. The pack isn't at the coop anymore. They're surrounding the house. Your father presses his back to the door, jaw tight, the burning stick clutched in one hand, the knife glinting in the other. He doesn't look at you, but his voice cuts low, sharp. Stay away from the walls. The fire pops. Outside, the frost groans under shifting weight. Somewhere above you in the rafters, a mouse scurries into the shadows, vanishing into silence. The night has turned into waiting, and the wolves are patient. The hut feels smaller now, as though the walls themselves are leaning inward, trying to shield you from what prowls beyond. The fire crackles softly, throwing thin blades of light across the dirt floor, but its warmth reaches no farther than your knees. The cold owns the rest of the room, cold in silence, broken only by the faint hiss of your mother's breath as she whispers prayers she never speaks aloud in daylight. Your father crouches by the door, one hand gripping the heavy oak beam, the other holding the knife low and steady. The glow of the burning stick in his fist paints his face in shifting shades of ash and ember. His shoulders rise and fall in slow, measured breaths, though you can see the tension in his neck, coiled, waiting. Outside, claws scrape softly across frozen earth. A pause. Then another sound, a short, deep growl, so close you feel it more than hear it. You imagine yellow eyes glinting in the dark, patient, clever, waiting for weakness. The chicken coop is silent now. No squawks, no frantic fluttering. Whatever was inside is gone, feathers scattered across frost like pale ghosts. You swallow hard, the dryness in your throat making it painful, and glance at your mother. Her eyes are wide, reflecting the fire, but she doesn't meet your gaze. She clutches your sister against her chest, rocking gently though she hums no song. Then, without warning, a loud thud slams against the wall behind you. Dust shakes from the roof beams, and your sister lets out a small, startled cry before burying her face deeper into your mother's shawl. You press a hand against the cold floor to steady yourself, feeling the vibration of another impact. Softer this time, lower, near the base of the wall. The pack is testing you. Your father straightens, taking a slow step toward the hearth. His voice is barely more than a whisper, but it cuts through the crackle of fire. More wood. Now, you nod quickly, grabbing the last small bundle of twigs and feeding them into the flames. Sparks leap upward, smoke stinging your eyes, but the fire finally answers, breathing louder, burning brighter. Its glow spills farther into the corners of the hut, chasing the shadows into brief retreat. For a moment, there's silence again, thick, uneasy, broken only by the faint snapping of burning bark. You hope it means the wolves are leaving, but deep down you know better. And then it comes. A howl erupts so close it shakes the air inside your chest. Deep, ragged, and endless, the sound carries through the boards, vibrating through the straw beneath you, into your very bones. Another joins it, higher, sharper, then another, farther back, until the night itself feels alive with their voices. The pack has surrounded the hut completely. Your mother closes her eyes, lips moving soundlessly, and pulls your sister tighter. You grip the edge of the hearth until your knuckles ache, forcing yourself to stay still even as your legs tremble. Then the scratching begins. Slow, deliberate, claws drag along the wood just beyond the doorframe. A faint creak follows as something presses its weight against the boards, testing, probing. You hear your father's breath hitch once, sharp and quiet, before settling again. He raises the burning stick, embers spilling like fireflies to the dirt. The glow reaches the door and paints the cracks with trembling orange light. Shadows move beyond it, tall, narrow, shifting. One shape passes close enough that its fur brushes against the wood, leaving faint streaks of frost behind. The wolves know you're inside, and they are no longer hunting the chickens. The fire spits and pops, throwing sparks into the stale air, but its light only sharpens the darkness beyond the door. Shadows shift outside, silent, fluid, restless. You can't see them, but you feel them, every breath heavier than the last, every heartbeat loud enough to betray you. Your father kneels by the crooked door, his hand resting lightly on the oak beam as though testing its strength. His other hand grips the burning stick tighter, its charred tip glowing faintly, casting soft halos against the rough walls. He doesn't move, doesn't blink. You follow his gaze, though there's nothing to see except darkness stitched with hunger. The scratching comes again. Slow, deliberate, claws scraping against wood, tracing the outline of your only defense. The sound raises the fine hairs along your arms until your skin feels cold despite the fire's weak warmth. You imagine teeth on the other side of the door, jaws flexing, lips drawn back from pale gums slick with frost. Then a sudden silence. The pack stops moving. No growls, no claws, nothing but wind slipping through the cracks in the thatch above. The stillness presses down so heavy you feel the weight of it in your lungs, choking you with anticipation. And then, thud. Something slams against the door so hard the hut shudders, the oak beam groaning beneath the force. Dust sifts from the rafters, sprinkling into your hair and settling on the thin blanket around your shoulders. Your sister cries out softly before your mother hushes her with a hand over her mouth, rocking gently as though motion alone could protect her. Another blow follows, louder this time, closer to splintering. Your father leans into the door, shoulder braced, feet planted firmly into the dirt floor. The burning stick in his hand trembles slightly, not from fear but from the weight of holding everything together. He glances at you once, sharply, silently, and you understand. Keep the fire alive. You scramble to the hearth, grabbing every scrap of wood left in the small bundle by the wall. The sticks are damp, brittle, some soft with rot, but you feed them into the embers anyway, desperate for flame. Smoke curls thick and low before finally catching, licking upward in fragile tongues of orange. Outside, the howls begin again. Closer now, louder, weaving together in an eerie chorus that makes the very walls seem to hum. One deep, guttural voice carries above the others the leader, maybe sharp and commanding, calling the pack to close in. Then comes the sound you dread most. The dog. It barks once high, panicked, then cuts off with a yelp swallowed by silence. You stare at the door, your chest tightening, knowing there is nothing now between the wolves and the walls but thin wood and prayer. Your father moves suddenly, grabbing a smoldering log from the hearth with his bare hand. The smoke coils around his wrist, burning skin, but he doesn't flinch. He thrusts it into the air above his head, embers spilling onto the dirt floor as he growls low through his teeth. If they breach the door, the fire drives them back. Remember that. You nod, though your throat feels too tight to speak. Another slam rattles the beam, louder than before, and this time you hear wood split near the bottom of the frame. A jagged crack creeps upward, thin as a blade. Cold air slips through it, curling across the floor like a warning. Your mother pulls your sister deeper into the farthest corner, covering her ears against the noise, her lips pressed to the crown of her tangled hair. You grip another stick, feeding the flames until they roar louder, until the hut smells of smoke and sap and burning bark. Outside, claws scrape again, paws shift against frozen soil. You hear them pacing now, 5, 6, maybe more, circling, closing, waiting for the weakest board to give. Then the leader howls. And this time it's right outside the door. The howl echoes so close that the wood beneath your palms vibrates with it, a deep, mournful sound that rolls through the hut like distant thunder. Your father doesn't flinch. His shoulders stay squared, his weight braced against the door, but you see the veins rising in his neck as the strain settles into his bones. Outside, the night holds its breath for a moment. A long, heavy silence broken only by the faint hiss of frost settling over the yard. Then the scratching begins again, harsher this time, claws digging grooves into the wood near the base of the doorframe. The sound drags like teeth across wet bone. Your mother rocks your sister slowly, whispering fragments of an old prayer she half remembers from her own childhood. Her words are soft, trembling, little more than breath. The girl hides her face in the folds of the shawl, though the fabric can't hide the quiet sobs that shake her shoulders. Your father motions silently toward you with his free hand, fingers splayed. Listen. You press your ear to the dirt-cold floor, trying to separate the sounds beyond the door. There's movement. Soft padding across frozen ground, shifting weight, the faint crunch of frost under paws. More than one, maybe 5, maybe 6. The pack paces in silence now, circling like a noose tightening around the hut. A low growl swells from one side, answered by a snap of teeth from another. Their shadows pass across the gaps between the boards, dark shapes that seem too large to belong to animals. Then comes the first strike. A violent slam shakes the door, the oak beam straining against its brackets with a groan so deep it sounds like bone cracking. Dust rains from the thatch above, stinging your eyes as you grab the burning stick your father had set aside. Another blow follows almost instantly, harder this time, the lower plank splintering where damp has weakened the grain. "They've scented the pig," your father murmurs without looking back. His voice is steady, but you hear the rough edge beneath it, the warning that hides inside his calm. The pig in the small pen outside squeals once, high, panicked, and then silence. That silence terrifies you more than any howl. Your mother's lips press thin, her face turned to the floor as if refusing to let herself hope the animal survives. She knows what you know: meat draws hunger, and hunger is stronger than fear. Another slam, then another. The boards bend inward, each strike deepening the cracks that leak cold into the room like creeping fingers. "More fire," your father says, this time louder, sharper. You grab what little wood remains, tossing damp scraps into the flames. Smoke billows upward, choking and heavy, but the fire bites greedily at the offering, clawing its way into brightness. Its glow paints the walls gold for a moment before fading into weak orange. You pray silently to a god you've never seen, willing the light to grow, to scream louder than the darkness beyond these walls. Then silence again. You freeze, breath caught in your chest, ears straining. No scratching, no growling, no pacing outside. And that silence is worse than the noise. Your father gestures for you to stay low, his body rigid against the door. The embers hiss behind you, the only sound inside the hut. For a moment you wonder if the pack has given up, if hunger has led them elsewhere. Then suddenly, claws rake the wall behind the hearth, sharp and violent, tearing splinters loose from the boards. Your mother gasps, clutching your sister tight, pulling her to the floor. You whip around toward the sound, heart hammering as the shadows dance madly across the smoke-stained ceiling. The wolves are testing every side now. They've learned the door won't break easily, and they're looking for another way in. The wind outside shifts, carrying with it the faint rustle of fur brushing against wood. You hold your breath, straining to separate the sounds from the low whistle slipping through the roof's cracked thatch. Your father doesn't move, his back pressed against the door, his shoulders set like stone. The fire spits weakly behind you, casting restless shadows on the walls, while the silence presses heavier than the frost. Then you hear it, faint but clear, claws scraping at the rear wall of the hut, deliberate and slow. The sound moves sideways, following the line where the boards meet the frozen earth. Something tests the base, pressing for weakness. The boards creak softly under the weight, and you imagine pale teeth buried deep in frost, gnawing at the edges of your safety. Your mother shifts closer to the hearth, pulling your sister beneath her shawl, whispering low prayers between sharp breaths. Her fingers tremble, but she hides it, cupping your sister's ears as though she can block out the hunger crouched just beyond the walls. Then another sound joins, the crunch of frost, closer this time. You glance toward the single crooked window near the roof beam, little more than a thin square cut into the wall and covered by oiled cloth. Beyond it, pale moonlight glints faintly on something moving in the yard. You crawl silently toward the window, each step careful not to wake the creaking floorboards beneath your knees. When you reach it, you lift the cloth just enough to peer outside. Two pinpricks of yellow light stare back at you from the dark. You flinch, nearly letting the cloth fall, your chest lurching as breath escapes you in a white cloud. The eyes don't blink. They glow faintly, reflecting the thin moonlight fixed directly on the hut. You stay frozen, your forehead pressed to the wall, until the second shape moves behind the first, low and silent, its shadow stretching across the frozen ground like spilled ink. They're closer now. Too close. Suddenly, something slams against the rear wall with a force so violent the entire hut trembles. A small clay bowl tips from the shelf above you and shatters on the packed dirt floor, the sound sharp and hollow in the frozen silence. Your sister gasps, her cry muffled instantly by your mother's hand, though her wide, tear-wet eyes shine in the firelight. "Stay low," your father growls under his breath, not looking back, both hands tight on the knife and burning stick. The orange glow licks the underside of his jaw, outlining the hard set of his face. Then, from somewhere just outside the door, a soft, deliberate huff. It's close enough now that you hear the wetness in its breath, feel the faint vibration against the wood beneath your palms. Another follows from the side of the hut, then another beyond the coop. They're all around you. The wolves have stopped circling. They've chosen their attack. The pack leader growls once, deep and low, a sound so guttural it sinks into your ribs and holds there. Then, as if on command, claws explode against the walls from every direction, scratching, scraping, pounding. The hut shakes under their weight, straw raining from the thatch above as if the very roof wants to collapse. Your father shouts for you to bring the iron pot from the hearth, his voice sharp but steady. You drag it close, the handle burning your hands, and shove it into the fire until the metal begins to hiss faintly. His plan is clear without words. Glowing iron and flame, the only weapons thin wood can't provide. For a heartbeat, the fire flares brighter, throwing orange and gold across the hut. But the sudden light does nothing to drive away the cold beyond the door, because outside something moves closer. The frost crunches once, twice, slowly, and then silence again. You freeze, clutching the pot handle, ears straining. In that stillness, the pack feels like part of the night itself, woven into shadow and wind. Then, without warning, a single deep howl tears through the air just outside the door, and this time the rest of the pack answers. The hunt has begun. The fire breathes low now, struggling to hold its life against the weight of frost pressing through every crack in the hut's walls. Shadows climb the smoke-stained beams above your head, twitching and bending with each weak flicker of light. You sit crouched near the hearth, knees pulled tight to your chest, the heat warming only your shins while the rest of your body trembles in the damp cold. Your father stays at the door, one hand braced firmly against the oak beam, the other gripping the smoldering stick as though his life depends on its glow. The knife lies on the floor by his side, its dull edge flashing when the firelight catches it. His back is tense, his shoulders broad but stiff with exhaustion. Still, he doesn't move. He listens. Beyond the walls, the silence has teeth. The pack isn't pacing anymore. You hear no claws, no growls, no movement, only the hollow whistle of wind dragging frost across the yard. The quiet should soothe you, but it doesn't. It presses heavier than noise, thick and suffocating, like the night itself is holding its breath. Your mother huddles in the farthest corner with your sister buried beneath her shawl, rocking gently without sound. Her lips move around prayers she doesn't voice, as though giving them to air might shatter their strength. Her eyes shine in the dim glow, wide and fixed on the doorway, unblinking. You glance back toward the window, little more than a scrap of oiled cloth stretched thin over a rough wooden frame. Beyond it, moonlight spills over the frozen yard, silvering the scattered feathers near the broken coop. Nothing moves there now. The chickens are gone, taken into the dark where you dare not follow. And then you hear it soft, deliberate, right behind the wall. A single scrape, claws dragging down rough timber, slow and steady like a warning written in wood. You flinch, your breath catching in your throat. Your father raises one finger sharply without turning his head. Silence. Even your mother's rocking stills. Another sound follows, this time on the opposite side of the hut. A low huff, wet and heavy, close enough that you can almost feel the heat of breath seeping through the gaps in the boards. The smell comes with it, faint but sharp, an animal stink threaded with frost and hunger. Your father whispers, his voice gravel against the hush, "They're testing us." Then it begins. A sudden slam rattles the door so violently, the oak beam groans beneath the strain. You scramble backward instinctively, your palms scraping against the dirt floor, while the burning stick in your father's hand spits embers into the air. The door holds barely, but the force of the impact echoes through the hut, shaking loose dust from the rafters above. Another blow lands. Then another. The wood splinters where damp rot has weakened it, a jagged crack creeping from the base of the frame upward like a vein of ice. You can see pale moonlight piercing through the gap, thin and sharp as a blade. Your mother clutches your sister closer, whispering in a rhythm now, each word sharp and fast like the beat of her own racing heart. Her hands cover your sister's ears, though you both know it's too late. The girl's small body trembles violently against her chest, shaking like the walls around her. Outside, the wolves answer each strike with snarls, deep and guttural, their voices overlapping until the night vibrates with sound. One growl rises above the rest, the leader. It echoes low and commanding, and you know without doubt that the next blow will be worse. Your father drops the smoldering stick into the hearth and reaches for the iron pot. The handle burns his hand, but he doesn't let go. He lifts it carefully, setting it on the edge of the fire until its rim glows faint red. You understand his plan before he speaks: the heat, the light, the scent of burning iron, all weapons wolves know to fear. "Keep it steady," he mutters, his voice rough with smoke and strain. You kneel beside him, clutching the wooden poker with both hands, your arms trembling but ready. The fire hisses louder now as damp twigs catch and snap, and the orange glow swells just enough to reach the farthest corners of the hut. Then from above, a creak. Your head jerks upward in time to see straw falling through the beams, tiny flakes tumbling silently into the air. Something shifts on the roof, heavy and deliberate. The sound moves across the thatch, slow, careful, searching. Your father's jaw clenches. "They're climbing," he whispers. A second later, a sharp, tearing sound rips through the ceiling as claws dig deep into the thatch. Cold air spills down like breath on your neck, carrying bits of loose straw with it. You duck instinctively, covering your head as your father thrusts the glowing iron upward, pressing it against the weak spot where the scratching grows louder. A pained snarl explodes above you, followed by the thud of something leaping back onto frozen ground outside. But the reprieve lasts only seconds. The wolves regroup quickly, their voices rising into a chorus of rage and hunger, echoing through the dark woods beyond. Another slam rocks the door, harder than any before. The beam creaks dangerously, the brackets groaning as if ready to tear free. Your father shoves the iron pot back into the fire, breath ragged now. "If they breach," he says, his voice low but sharp, "aim for the eyes. The leader first, always the leader." You nod without thinking, though your stomach twists tight at the thought. The wind outside shifts again, carrying the sound of soft paw steps circling close, weaving between shadows. Then silence returns, the kind of silence that carries weight, dense and waiting, like the world has tucked its breath beneath the frost. And then from just beyond the door, a sound so soft it chills your blood. A low, steady growl, not rage, not warning, patience. The leader waits, and so do you. The silence does not comfort you. It clings, heavy, thick. It presses into the gaps between each heartbeat until you feel your own pulse in your ears, sharp and relentless. The fire breathes faintly behind you, its glow crawling across the dirt floor like spilled honey, but even its light feels small now, a fragile thing in a night with too many teeth. Your father crouches by the door, his body bent low, one hand still locked tight around the glowing iron pot, the other clutching the knife's worn handle. Sweat beads along his temple despite the cold, darkening the threads of his tunic where frost hasn't yet claimed it. He does not move. He listens. You can hear his breath, slow and deliberate, fighting to stay steady despite the storm building just beyond the walls. Your mother huddles in the corner with your little sister pulled tight beneath her shawl, rocking slowly, silently, the rhythm as old as the earth beneath your knees. Her lips move in prayers older still, but they make no sound now. Her eyes dart between you and the door, wide and shining, reflecting the firelight like wet glass. Outside, the wolves pace. You cannot hear their paws on the frozen ground, but you feel them. Their presence is a weight against the air itself, pressing against the fragile walls, filling the yard with a hunger so sharp it seems to hum. Somewhere near the pigsty, frost crunches beneath careful steps. The sound drifts, vanishes, returns again from the far side. They're testing you, your strength, your fear, your patience. Then it happens. A single deep growl rises from the dark, low and commanding. It isn't the sound of attack. It's permission. The door takes the first blow. The hut shakes so hard you fall forward onto your hands, dirt biting into your palms. The beam groans under the weight of the impact, splinters peeling from the frame. Dust spills from the roof beams, mixing with smoke until the air tastes dry and bitter on your tongue. Another strike follows, harder, closer to breaking. You hear the sharp crack of wood tearing beneath claw and weight. A ragged gap opens near the base of the door, no bigger than a coin at first, but through it you see frost, darkness, and movement. Your sister lets out a muffled sob before your mother clamps a hand gently over her mouth, whispering words into her hair you can't hear. You grip the poker tighter, knuckles white, and crawl closer to the hearth where the iron pot hisses faintly, its rim glowing deep red. Then you hear it, breathing, close, wet, heavy. The sound drips through the crack beneath the doorframe, filling the small hut with the musk of damp fur and blood. Your father shifts his weight, shoulders braced against the beam, teeth clenched so hard you hear them grind. He whispers, barely more than a thread of sound. They want us scared, don't give it to them. But you are scared, terrified. Your bones feel hollow, as though the cold has carved them from the inside out. The fire's warmth can't reach you here. A sudden scrape erupts near the far wall. Claws tearing at the boards behind the hearth, shredding thin wood into splinters. You whip around, heart hammering, just as another blow crashes against the door, shaking the hut from corner to corner. Then the leader howls. It isn't like the others. It's deep, long, heavy with hunger and command. And this time the rest of the pack answers. The sound surrounds you, above and behind, to the left, to the right, a cage of sound closing tight around the hut. You can't tell how many there are. 5, 6, maybe more. Suddenly, something slams into the wall behind your mother, rattling the boards hard enough to knock loose a shelf above her head. Clay bowls crash to the ground, shattering on impact. Your sister screams now, sharp and piercing, before your mother pulls her against her chest, rocking harder, faster, her whispered prayers breaking into ragged breaths. Your father moves quickly, dragging the glowing pot away from the hearth with a rag-wrapped hand. The iron hisses against the dirt floor, searing through brittle straw, leaving black marks behind. He sets it near the door, close to the growing crack, where the red glow spills faintly into the yard. The wolves pause. You hear their claws scraping softly against the frozen ground as they circle again, reassessing. Their breathing comes quick, harsh, sharp as blades dragged through snow. One snarls low, testing the air, while another paces near the broken coop. Your father's hand tightens on the knife. "They'll come again," he says. "Be ready." The moment stretches thin, drawn taut between heartbeats. The fire behind you spits once, the last branch collapsing into ash, sending sparks swirling upward like tiny embers of hope before they vanish into the smoky dark. Then the silence breaks. 3 of them hit the door at once. The oak beam buckles under the weight, its brackets shrieking in protest, and for a heartbeat you're certain the whole frame will tear free. The glowing pot tips slightly, spilling embers into the dirt, but your father's foot catches it, steadying it just in time. Through the widening crack you see fur, thick, dark, and wet with frost. A paw slams against the door, claws gouging deep grooves into the wood, splintering it beneath sheer force. You thrust the poker forward instinctively, jamming the glowing tip toward the gap, and a sharp yelp tears through the night before vanishing into a chorus of growls and snapping teeth. For a moment there is chaos, snarling, scraping, the pounding of paws shifting rapidly outside the door. Your father barks something short and rough, but you barely hear it above the noise. Then, just as suddenly, it stops. The night is silent again, but the silence feels different now. They aren't gone. They're waiting. Somewhere just beyond the thin walls of your hut, the wolves crouch low in the frost, their breath misting silver beneath the pale moonlight. The leader growls once, quiet and deep, as if speaking only to the pack. And you know what it means. They will come again. And next time they won't stop until the door gives. The fire is dying. Its light crawls low along the dirt floor, a weak, flickering breath swallowed by the weight of shadow. You stare at it, willing it to grow, to roar, to bite, but the embers glow faint and shallow now, too small to warm, too dim to keep fear away. The air tastes of smoke, sweat, and frost. Your father kneels near the door, his back pressed against the heavy oak beam that still holds, but only just. One bracket has already cracked. You see it bending where the wood splintered under the last strike. His hands tremble slightly, though not from cold. In one he grips the knife, dull, chipped, its handle worn smooth from decades of labor. In the other he clutches the glowing poker, its tip breathing faint heat into the frozen dark. The hut feels smaller now. The air is thick with smoke from damp kindling and the sour stink of fear. Behind you, your mother crouches in the corner with your sister wrapped beneath her shawl. She rocks slowly, humming no song you recognize, her breath quick and shallow against the child's damp hair. The rhythm of her motion steadies you, but it does nothing to keep your hands from shaking where they grip the edge of the hearth. Outside, the frost whispers beneath shifting paws. You hear them circling, soft crunches in the snow, deliberate and slow, moving just beyond the reach of the dying firelight leaking through the cracks in the walls. Every step feels measured, testing, patient. Wolves are clever, your father always said, clever as men but hungrier than gods. Tonight they prove him right. Then you hear the leader. A single low growl drifts through the doorframe, so deep it seems to come from the earth itself. It vibrates through your ribs, rumbling like distant thunder over frozen hills. And in that sound you hear certainty. This is their night, and you are theirs if you falter. The pack answers in whispers, claws scratching briefly against wood, breath rasping softly in the cold. Then silence falls again, stretched so tight between heartbeats you feel it crackle in your ears. And then, without warning, the next strike comes. The first breach, the hut shudders violently, dust tumbling from the rafters, loose straw spinning in the air like trapped snow. The doorframe groans beneath the weight, and this time, you hear the sharp splintering of wood tearing away from its joints. Your father curses low under his breath, planting his heel harder against the beam to brace it. They've found the weak spot, he growls, his voice rasping, strained but steady. Another slam follows almost instantly, closer to the ground this time. The planks split under the force, and through the jagged crack you glimpse wet fur and frost, pale breath curling like smoke in the night. A snout pushes against the gap, teeth flashing briefly in the glow of the fire, before retreating just as fast as claws rake against the boards. Your sister lets out a muffled cry, and your mother presses her face against her chest, murmuring softly as though words can shield her from hunger with teeth. You grip the poker so tightly your fingers ache, the heat bleeding into your palms as though the fire itself has sunk beneath your skin. Then your father shouts, not in fear but command. The pot. Now you grab the iron pot from the hearth, its rim glowing faintly red, and drag it to the door. The heat scorches your fingers through the rag-wrapped handle, the hiss loud as snow sizzles where it touches the rim. You set it down beside him, and without pause, he plunges the glowing poker deep into the coals, forcing the tip until it blazes white. When the next blow comes, he's ready. The snout pushes through the widening gap again, this time stronger, jaws snapping at the air as claws scrape against the beam. Your father thrusts the red-hot poker into the darkness, and a shriek tears through the night, sharp and ragged, followed by the frantic scrabble of paws retreating into frost. The pack erupts into chaos, snapping, snarling, howling, their rage spilling across the yard like fire. But you know it won't last. Pain is not fear, and wolves do not leave what they've claimed. The quiet doesn't last long. A soft creak above your head pulls your gaze to the ceiling, where the thatch shivers gently, as though touched by something heavier than wind. You hold your breath, straining to listen, when another sound joins it, the faint rasp of claws scratching straw. There on the roof, you whisper before you can stop yourself. Your father curses again, this time louder, grabbing the glowing poker and motioning for you to stay low. The roof dips slightly under shifting weight, scattering bits of loose straw down onto your shoulders. You duck instinctively, your heart pounding as a shadow moves slowly across the low beam above the hearth. Then a sharp tear rips through the thatch. Cold air spills down, carrying with it flecks of frost and dirt. Through the opening, you catch a glimpse of pale eyes reflecting the dim firelight close, too close. One paw forces itself through the gap, claws digging into the timber as the weight above presses down, testing the roof's strength. Back, your father roars, thrusting the poker upward. Sparks leap wildly as the glowing tip meets flesh, and the wolf above snarls, retreating with a hiss of pain. You hear it leap down onto frozen ground, but before relief can settle, two more sets of claws skitter across the roof. They're learning, the door won't hold, the walls won't hold, and soon neither will the roof. The decision your father lowers the poker, sweat streaking his soot-darkened face, his breath coming fast and ragged now. He glances toward your mother, who rocks your sister in silence, her lips still moving in whispered prayers. Finally, he speaks low, sharp, meant only for you. If they breach, stay behind me. Do not run, do not scream. Eyes first, throat second. Understand? You nod, though your hands tremble violently around the wooden poker, your grip slippery with sweat despite the freezing air. The fire hisses low behind you, shrinking now to little more than embers. The hut smells of smoke and fear and blood. Outside, the pack waits in silence, shadows circling like vultures, their breath rising pale and sharp in the frost. Then the leader growls again, one deep, unbroken sound. The others answer instantly. Paws shift against the frozen ground, claws clicking against stone, weight gathering in the darkness. You know what's coming. When the door gives, there will be no more waiting. The growl outside gathers the night into one long thread and pulls. Your father lifts his chin, every tendon in his neck drawn tight. Behind you, the embers sag low, a red eye blinking slower with each breath. There is no more wood, no more anything, only iron, smoke, and the small courage left in your hands. The first hit lands like a hammer. The beam shrieks. The door bows inward and springs back, spitting splinters. A second strike follows before the house can finish its shudder. The bracket at the hinge side tears farther from the post with a sound like wet cloth ripping. Cold spears through the widening seam, and you see it, fur, rimed with frost, a wet black nose testing the gap. Hold, your father rasps, voice raw from smoke. He plants one foot against the beam, shoulders braced. When it comes through, eyes. The snout pushes deeper, jaws working, breath steaming into the room with the sour heat of meat and winter. You lunge. The poker's white tip hisses in the cold. You thrust. A flash of teeth, a smell of burned hair, and the night screams. Paws scrabble, then the shape jerks back. The hut falls into panting silence, broken only by your sister's small hiccup of fear beneath your mother's shawl. Again, your father says, not to you, to himself, and sets his weight ready for the next blow. It comes from above. Thatch tears. Straw sifts down in a thin whisper, and then a weight hits the roof beam so hard the peg jumps in its mortise. Claws rake, the thatch parts. A foreleg punches through, groping for purchase. Your father wheels, driving the poker up. The iron kisses flesh. The leg snaps back with a snarl and a rain of cold straw. Another body thumps to the roof, then another, prowling for the weak seam you just bared. They're learning, your father mutters. They're hungry, your mother answers, so softly you almost don't hear it. Her thumbs circle your sister's temples, slow and steady, as if drawing warmth out of the air. The door booms. The beam jumps. The split along the lower plank zips upward like lightning. You see an eye then, pale and glassy in the fireglow, a coin of yellow hammered thin by hunger. It blinks once slow, it knows you. Now, your father breathes. He drags the iron pot to the threshold. The rim glows a dull cherry. With his other hand he scoops a shovel of embers out onto the dirt, nudging them into a low, mean crescent before the door, a fire line, thin as a prayer. The pack answers with sound. Howls stack on howls until the walls hum. On your right, claws attack the siding near the hearth. Behind you, thatch creaks as weight flows across it in a dark tide. In front, breath huffs through the crack, tasting the smoke, counting your heart. The beam coughs. Splinters leap. The door jerks in its frame and gives, not all the way, not yet, but enough. A head rams through the seam near the floor, jaws gaping, tongue lolling, eyes lit by your small red hell. It is younger than you expect, the fur still plush around the ears. It lunges for the ember crescent, hesitates at the heat, then commits. Your father drops low with a guttural sound that is not a word and meets it. The poker explodes white. You drop with him and swing for the eyes as he rakes the iron across the muzzle. The wolf snaps, blind with smoke and pain, and catches your father's forearm instead. Time stutters, teeth close. His breath bursts out in a sound you've heard only when he lifts stones too heavy to admit. You strike once, twice, aiming where the pupil should be. The tip bites flesh. The wolf shrieks, jerks, then your father's knife flashes up, not deep, not pretty, but perfect enough to change the animal's mind. It tears free, dragging strips of sleeve and a thread of blood into the night. Your mother does not scream. She rises. In one motion she snatches the ash pail, appends it across the ember crescent until the fire squats low, all smoke and choke. Then, with the same hands that braid your sister's hair, she flings the hot lid of the iron pot into the gap so it clangs against teeth. The wolf yelps and vanishes into frost. Back, your father snaps, staggering to his feet, one arm pressed to his ribs, the other clamping his bleeding forearm. They'll rush the gap. Light. You fling straw onto the embers. They take with a dry sigh, burn fast, hungry, the flame flaring taller than your knee, then settling to a sullen line again. Smoke bulks under the roof, thick as wool. The oiled window cloth trembles with each shove from outside. Above, the roof gives another complaint, a beam groan, then the breathy chuckle of straw sliding under weight. A dark wedge of muzzle forces into the thatch and rips. Moonlight leaks in a silver thread. You grab the half-burned faggot on the hearth and jam it up into the rent. Fire licks fur. The roof snarls and withdraws, but only to a safer span. The tread returns. They are patient carpenters, peeling any seam that resists. Listen, your father says. He is swaying, jaw set, blood slicking his wrist and dripping from his elbow onto the packed earth in neat coins. We can't hold a dozen doors. We make one. You stare at him, uncomprehending. We choose how they enter, he says, already moving. He nudges the ember crescent wider with the poker, then rakes the scattered straw around it into a low berm. On my call, we pull the beam, open a spear width, and we blind what comes first. We close before the second finds its courage. 3 times, 4, until they learn or dawn. Dawn won't stop hunger, your mother says, bandage in her hand already, her eyes burning with a fire older than the hearth. It slows it, he answers, and it sees. He doesn't wait for agreement. He nods once. Your mother knots a strip of linen tight around his forearm, yanking until his breath stalls. You shove the poker back into the coals until it howls white again. Your sister peels her face from the shawl and looks at you, eyes huge, shining, believing you more flame than flesh. Ready, your father says. Ready, you answer, though your mouth is dry and your knees feel like thawed clay. He kicks the ember line open, hot teeth scattering, and jerks the beam. The door springs a hand's width. The night lunges. A head rams the gap, larger than the juvenile, scar along the brow, ears tattered, a rope of old frost dangling from the jaw. Its eyes find the light and narrow with a hate that is almost human. You do not think, you burn. The white tip sears across the eyes and the world becomes sound. A scream, your own, the wolf's, the hiss of moisture detonating on iron. Your father slams the beam. The door snaps shut with a jar that rattles the hut's ribs. Outside, the yard detonates into violence, snarls, snapping teeth, bodies colliding in animal fury as the half-blinded alpha flails into its own. They'll hate you for that, your father pants, one corner of his mouth quirking without joy. Good again. You repeat the motion. Ember, beam, spear width opening. A second wolf commits, held down by the pack's pressure behind it. You catch the eye clean this time, smell fat spit on iron, drive it back over the fire line. It hits the embers, rolls, rises wild and smoking, and the pack scatters just far enough for you to slam the door a second time. Your lungs burn. Your eyes stream. The hut is a bowl of smoke and small light, full of the wet tang of singed hair and the copper thread of your father's blood. The roof mutters again. The thatch near the rent begins to glow a sullen orange, ember caught in straw. "Roof," your mother says sharply. You leap onto the stool, snatch the damp cloak from its peg and slap it hard against the brightening spot. The ember smothers with an ugly hiss, leaving a scar of soot and steam. Outside, as if the roof's failure to burn has robbed them of one tactic, the wolves return to the door with renewed fury. "Last time," your father says, voice blurred with pain. "If they keep, we go to the corner, there's more wall than door there." You nod, though you don't believe there is anywhere left to go. Ember line, beam, spear width night. What comes this time is not a head but a shoulder, mass behind it, driving the lower planks inward with cold logic. The beam skates in its brackets. The door flexes wide enough for air to knife in and smoke to eddy out. An enormous paw breaches the gap, claws like black hooks. It sweeps the ember crescent aside in one savage rake and plants itself inside your house. Your father doesn't reach for the poker. He drops the knife. He seizes the iron pot with both hands, red rim and all, and heaves. The pot flips, spills its stubborn heat into the gap and kisses the paw square. The wolf screams high and alien and tears back with such violence the door slams itself. You smell cooked pad and vomit into your mouth and swallow it by force. The yard goes very quiet. Wind worries the ragged fringe of the thatch rent. The ember crescent gutters broken by that one rake. Your arms shake. Your father leans against the beam, eyes closed, blood dripping off his fingertips, his breath a saw. And then faint, so faint you think you've imagined it, the horizon inhales. Not light. Not yet. A thinning. The darkness outside turns from iron to slate, the edges of things easing into the world. Somewhere far off a crow tries a doubtful cough. Your mother lifts her head, like a deer feeling a tremor through hoof to bone. "Listen," she says. You do. For the first time since the howls began, you hear the wolves as animals and not night. They shift. They pace. They do not leave. But the leader, the ragged brow, the ruined eyes, gives a sound you have not heard from it until now. A low, steady whine shaped like thought. It makes a choice. A long breath rolls across the yard as the pack loosens. Paws pad over frost, not away, not yet, but into the hedgerow's shadow where dawn will be kinder to their pride. One body pauses by the broken coop. Feathers lift and fall. Another lingers by the door and huffs once, a promise written in steam, not finished. Then they go, one by one, disappearing into bramble and gray. Silence returns wearing a different face. You sag to your knees. Your mother eases your sister down and kisses her hair. Your father opens his eyes and looks at his arm as if surprised to find it still there. You bind it tighter. He watches your hands with a softness you have not seen since before the frost came. "Stoke what's left," he says. "We'll need light for the wound." You feed the embers the only thing you have left, the broken shelf slat, the stool rung, the split clogs by the door whose strap was long dead anyway. The fire licks them like a starving mouth and finds itself for one brief flare. In its lift, you see the hut as it is. Smoke black, straw spattered, floor torn by claws. Your mother's hair powdered with ash. Your sister's face shining with tear tracks. Your father's sleeve stiff with blood. A home that did not break. Beyond the door, the east thinks about dawn. You lean your forehead to the beam and feel it, warm from your father's back, scarred from the night's teeth, solid still. You survived a frosty night in medieval England. Dawn will ask its price. Dawn doesn't arrive. It seeps. The first light crawls into the hut like a thief, hesitant, pale, unwilling to disturb what it finds. The frost on the inside of the walls glimmers faintly, spiderweb stiff with tiny glass threads. The air is still bitter and sharp, but it carries a different weight now, thinner, lighter somehow, as though the darkness has loosened its grip by a fraction. The embers hiss quietly in the hearth, more smoke than heat. You crouch beside them, coaxing the last splinters of wood toward the shallow glow, but they only smolder, throwing shadows long and fragile across the dirt floor. Your hands shake from cold, from hunger, from the remnants of fear. Your breath still fogs in front of your lips. Beside you, your mother works silently. She unwraps the bloody cloth from your father's forearm with careful fingers, peeling it away where dried blood has glued linen to skin. He doesn't flinch, though his jaw is tight and gray with pain. The wound is deep but clean, no ragged edges, no teeth broken off in the flesh. Luck or stubborn bone. Your sister sleeps under the wool shawl, her breath soft and shallow, lashes tangled from dried tears. A curl of ash rests on her cheek where she pressed against your mother's skirt through the night. She will not remember all of it. You envy her for that. The house smells of everything the night left behind: smoke, blood, wet fur, and the bitter tang of burned meat. No one speaks of it. Words feel too fragile in the silence, as though breaking them would summon the wolves back from the tree line. Outside, the world waits when you step into the yard. The frost bites deep, gnawing at your bare soles until you curl your toes against the dirt. Every sound is loud in this kind of cold. The pop of ice cracking in the water bucket, the sharp creak of the old fence bowing under its frost, even your breath pushing through your lips like steam from a kettle. The world looks smaller than it did last night. The thatched roofs of nearby huts hunch low under thin, white blankets. Fields beyond the village lie dark and brittle beneath the weight of frost, stalks bent like old spines. Smoke rises slowly from the neighbor's chimney, pale and thin, dissolving into the brightening gray. The ground tells its own story. Paw prints dig deep into the frozen mud, a chaotic ring around your hut and the chicken coop. You crouch to study them. Some are small, sharp, quick. Others larger, wider, heavy enough to crack the crust where they landed. You trace the biggest with a fingertip, your breath misting into the hollowed pad. Closer to the door you find blood, small drops, dried black against the frost. Not yours, not your father's. One of them carries your fire in its flesh now. You try to feel proud. You fail. The coop is ruined. 3 boards torn free, feathers scattered like gray snow over the yard. One hen lies still near the fence, stiff as stone, its beak frozen open. 2 are gone entirely, dragged silent into the bramble beyond the pasture. A hard loss, but not your last. You'll have to patch the boards before night comes again. Father's silence. Your father joins you slowly, his steps measured, careful on the frozen ground. His face is pale under soot and ash, the bandaged arm tucked close to his ribs. He doesn't speak at first. He only stares at the tracks, jaw working, lips pale, breath rising in short bursts. When he finally talks, his voice is low and hoarse. "They'll be back," he says simply. No anger, no fear, just fact. You nod because you've known it since the moment they vanished into the hedge. The pack didn't retreat because it lost. It retreated because dawn came. And dawn doesn't last forever. "We'll set spikes," your father continues, motioning toward the narrow path leading to the tree line. "Boards from the fence, nails if the blacksmith has any to spare, ashes around the door. A pit by the coop if we can dig through the frost." You glance at his bandaged arm, but he catches your thought before you voice it. "I'll dig," he says, tone sharp enough to cut off pity. "If the ground's too hard, we burn it soft first." You want to argue, but you don't. His silence isn't weakness, it's weight. Inside, the fire wanes when you return. The hut feels colder than outside. The fire has died to its last bones. Your mother is hunched low, fingers red with cold and soot, grinding dried nettles into a wooden bowl for tea. The steam rises faintly, thin and bitter, but it's something warm to swallow when food will not come until later. On the hearth sits the salt pouch, frayed, patched, as old as your memory. You catch your mother's gaze lingering on it. Her lips press tight around the words she doesn't want to speak, and then she murmurs them anyway. Salt for thresholds, fire for corners, prayers for sleep. It's not a ritual. It's a promise she keeps making, night after night, even when the firewood dwindles and the salt tastes like dust. You move to sit by your sister, tucking the edge of the shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her skin is cold beneath your fingertips, but her breathing is steady. You brush the ash from her cheek and glance back at your parents, their shadows stretched long in the pale light creeping through the cracks. For the first time since the wolves came, you realize just how small your hut is. One more night like last, and it will not stand. Neither will you. The edge of hunger your father pours the last of yesterday's grain into a clay pot. It rattles hollow, barely enough for a thin porridge to share between four mouths. He pauses, fingers lingering on the lip of the pot, then sets it down without looking at you. "We'll need to ask the steward for more," he says finally. The words hang in the smoke like frost-laden breath. You think of the man in the red cloak, his ledger neat and cruel, the cold glint of coins dropped into his iron box. Asking him means debt. Debt means chains heavier than frost. Your mother doesn't meet your eyes. She grinds the nettles harder until the bowl groans against the table. You swallow and say nothing. Dawn's unkind gift the morning widens slowly, pale light spilling deeper into the yard, over the torn coop, the blood-flecked snow, the track of claws circling your door. Crows gather near the hedges, hopping from shadow to shadow, black feathers flashing against frost. Beyond them the tree line waits. It is beautiful in its silence, soft with mist, layered in frost, branches trembling faintly where the last shapes vanished hours ago. But you know better than to trust it now. Those trees carry memory. They carry hunger, too. You wrap the salt pouch tighter around your wrist before stepping back inside. Tonight will come again. The sun drags itself into the sky like an old man hauling a broken cart. Its light is weak, gray, and cold, more memory than warmth. The frost clings stubbornly to every roof, every splinter of wood, every patch of frozen mud between the huts. Even the smoke rising from the chimneys curls low and slow, pinned down by the weight of winter. You pull your patched tunic tighter, though the wind slips through every seam and gnaws at your ribs like a hungry dog. Your breath comes out in small clouds that vanish before you can feel them. The cold has teeth today, sharp enough to split lips and stiffen fingers before the sun even climbs past the hedges. At the far end of the lane, the bell rings once, sharp and hollow. A summons. The village square, the square isn't really a square. It's a patch of frozen earth where the paths between the huts tangle together, churned into hard ridges by countless boots and wagon wheels. This morning it fills slowly with figures wrapped in furs, wool, and rags. Men, women, children clutching shawls, all drawn by the same sound, the same reason. The wolves. You can see it in their faces. The hollow cheeks, the bloodshot eyes, the shoulders sloped under more than cold. Last night was not yours alone. 3 huts bear fresh scratches on their doors. 1 coop is gone entirely, only splintered boards and a scattering of feathers left behind. An old man stands beside what's left of it, silent, hands clasped around a rope that once tethered his only goat. His breath comes in shudders, not from cold, but because his rope leads nowhere now. Your father stands near the front, shoulders square despite the bandage on his arm. His jaw is locked, but his gaze moves like a blade across the gathered crowd. Beside him, the blacksmith wipes his sooty hands on a rag, expression carved from stone. He says nothing yet. The steward is here too. Red cloak, polished boots, his ledger tucked neatly under one arm. He watches the villagers as if measuring each breath, each complaint, each hidden coin buried under frost and fear. Voices rise, "They'll come back," someone says. "They never take this many birds unless they're starving." "The snow's driven prey deeper into the forest," another answers. "We're the nearest meat." The blacksmith spits into the dirt. "Then we hunt them," he says flatly. "Set traps in the hollow, bait near the hedgerows. Run them into the old quarry where the ground splits easy." A murmur ripples through the crowd. The women glance at one another. The men shift on their feet. A boy near you, younger than your sister, clutches his father's cloak and whispers, "They took our hen. They'll take us next." Your father's voice cuts through the noise, low and steady, meant to calm or command, you can't tell which. Hunting a pack in this frost, he says, is asking to feed them more than we kill. The blacksmith narrows his soot-lined eyes. And waiting for them to come scratching at your door again, is that better? The argument spirals. Traps or fire? Bait or barricades? The voices overlap until meaning dissolves into sound, a restless murmur, the same tone the pack used last night before it struck. Then the steward clears his throat. One sound, sharp as flint-splitting bark. The ledgers wait whether you hunt or hide, he says, voice smooth and precise. The Lord's tithe stands. He lifts the ledger slightly, its red cord gleaming in the pale sun. 1/10 of all grain, 3 hens per household, and a silver penny by the month's end. No one breathes for a moment. The silence spreads like frost over water. 3 hens. The old man with the rope croaks finally, his voice cracked and small. The wolves took mine. The steward's smile is thin as paper. Then you'll bring me coin instead. You feel the weight of the words press against the square, pinning everyone to the earth. The blacksmith swears under his breath. Your mother exhales sharply beside you, though she says nothing. The crowd murmurs again, this time darker, slower. A shadow moves among the villagers, not a wolf, but something colder. Desperation. After the meeting by midday, the crowd scatters back to the huts like startled birds, muttering prayers, curses, and warnings under their breath. Only a few stay near the square, huddled around the blacksmith as he sketches crude lines in the frost with a splinter of wood, plans for traps, for spears, for anything that might keep teeth from doors. Your father grips your shoulder before turning home. Help me with the spikes, he says. We'll set them by dusk. The path back to your hut crunches under your bare heels. Blood stains the frost where last night's fight spilled from the door. The boards creak under your hand when you push them aside, as if remembering the weight of claws and jaws pressing against them. Inside, the hut is dark and close. Your sister curls under her shawl, humming softly to herself, the way children do when they pretend not to hear grown-up fears. Your mother sets the last of the grain on the table, measuring it with a palm, lips tight with thought. We won't have enough, she says quietly, almost to herself. And for the first time, you realize she doesn't mean food. The shadow at the tree line late afternoon brings a brittle hush to the village. The sun hangs low, pale as a coin rubbed smooth by too many hands. You kneel in the yard, driving sharpened stakes into the frozen ground with a mallet your father carved from oak years ago. Each strike echoes dull and heavy against the earth, more sound than progress. When you pause to rest, sweat cooling too fast on your spine, you glance toward the tree line. The forest looks empty. It isn't. You feel it, the way the silence holds its breath there, the way the frost refuses to settle too thick on the low branches. You cannot see the shapes, but you know they are there, watching, waiting. Tonight will be worse. You know it in your bones, the way you know winter steals faster than it gives. The sun dies early. It doesn't sink, it vanishes. One moment pale light glimmers faintly across frost-laced roofs, and the next, the shadows stretch long and unbroken, swallowing the fields whole. Cold presses down heavier than before, sharper, as though the first night was only a warning, and now winter comes to collect. The yard smells of pine smoke, frozen earth and fear. You and your father kneel by the door, hammering the last stake into the frozen mud. Your hands are raw and numb, fingers split open where splinters dug deep hours ago. Each strike echoes through the brittle silence, the sound swallowed almost instantly by the frost-thick air. Around the hut, sharpened spikes rise like jagged teeth, crude but solid, set at angles to catch whatever prowls too close. Behind you, your mother scatters a thin line of ash across the threshold, lips moving in a prayer that sounds older than any church bell. The salt pouch hangs at her wrist, worn and frayed, clinking faintly with each motion. Your sister crouches in the doorway, small hands tangled in her shawl, wide eyes fixed on the tree line. She hasn't spoken since morning. None of you have. The village without light as dusk sinks fully, the village folds in on itself. Doors close softly, bolts slide home, and shudders groan under stiff, frozen hands. Smoke curls weakly from crooked chimneys, carrying whispers of damp firewood and desperation. From the square, faint shapes move like shadows against shadows, men setting snares with trembling fingers, dragging brush across the paths to confuse whatever hunts. The blacksmith's torch sputters weakly in the distance, its glow fragile against the endless dark creeping down from the hills. A baby cries somewhere 2 huts over, sharp and thin, quickly hushed beneath a mother's hand. Beyond that, silence reigns. Even the wind is cautious now, rustling through frost-bitten reeds as though afraid to be heard. You glance at the forest. The branches sway gently, though no wind touches them. Ash and oaths inside, the hearth glows faintly, its warmth barely stretching beyond your knees. Your father sits cross-legged on the dirt floor, knife in hand, carving long stakes from the last of the firewood. Each curl of shavings falls softly to the ground, catching the weak light like dying embers. "These'll hold," he mutters, voice hoarse but steady. "If they test the wall, we push them through the gaps." You nod, though the motion feels heavy, slow. Your arms ache from the hammer, your knees still numb from kneeling on frozen ground. The room smells of sap, smoke, and sweat soaked deep into patched cloth. Your mother sets a clay bowl on the table, its thin porridge steaming faintly, more water than grain. One bowl for 4 mouths. No one complains. Hunger has a way of teaching silence faster than fear ever could. She murmurs another prayer as she dips her fingers in salt and sprinkles a thin line around the hearth. "Salt for thresholds," she whispers. "Fire for corners. Breath for dawn." Your father doesn't look up. But when the words fade, his knife slows for a heartbeat before biting wood again. The howl beneath the moon, it begins earlier this time. The first howl rips through the dark while the last scraps of sunset still bleed faintly over the hills. Long, sharp, and closer than before. The sound slides under the cracks in the door, curls around your ribs, and digs its claws deep. Your sister stiffens, clutching her shawl tighter, and your mother's lips press pale and thin. Your father sets the knife down carefully, deliberately, and rises to his feet. A second howl answers from the opposite side of the village. Then another, and another, 4, 5, 6. The pack has split, circling, driving the fear inward, hurting you without stepping a single paw into the yard. Somewhere near the square, a torch flares briefly, bright and violent, then vanishes into the dark with a hiss. A shout follows, muffled, ragged, cut short. You can't see the shape, but you hear the weight of it, claws dragging through snow, boots pounding earth, the distant crack of wood splitting against bone. Your father moves to the door. He doesn't speak, but you know. Tonight will not be like the last. The first test, the scratching, starts softly. Faint claws dragging lazily against the coop walls, testing the boards, marking where they gave way before. Then the sound shifts to the stakes, the steady scrape of teeth against frozen wood, probing for weakness. You grip the poker, the same one you drove into fur and flesh the night before, its tip already warming where it rests against the hearth. Your palms are damp despite the cold, your breath ragged as you force it through tight teeth. A growl follows, not low this time, but sharp, close, one step beyond the door. Your father raises his hand and you freeze. Outside, you hear soft paw steps crunching frost, circling, circling, never striking yet, only listening. One passes so close to the wall that you can hear its breath, wet and steaming, fogging against the planks. Your sister starts to whimper. Your mother's palm finds her hair, pressing gently, silent, rocking her slow and small, as if she could shrink the child from the wolf's ears. Then something heavy collides against the spikes. A yelp follows, high, pained, but it's cut short, swallowed into silence. The silence is worse than the howling. The waiting game minutes stretch into hours. The fire dies lower. The air grows colder, thicker, filled with every imagined sound. Sometimes it's real, claws on wood, breaths in frost, snapping twigs. Sometimes it's only your heart pounding too loud, your ears catching ghosts where nothing moves. Your father doesn't sit. He stands by the door, poker in hand, shoulders tense but still, his breath measured as though refusing to give them more than he must. Your mother kneels in the corner with your sister pressed tight to her chest, whispering half prayers you don't recognize. You keep your gaze fixed on the faint glow beneath the doorframe. The light spills onto the frost outside, broken only when shadows pass over it. 1, 2, 3, more than last night. They're waiting, not for hunger, for exhaustion. A scream splits the village, sharp, distant, cut short too fast. Somewhere far off, another torch goes out. Then another howl rises, not from the woods this time, but from the middle of the square. They're inside the walls. The scream dies too quickly. The silence that follows is worse. For a moment, the entire village seems to hold its breath. The frost, the wind, the very earth beneath your bare feet feels locked in place, as though even the soil knows to listen. Your heart thunders in your ribs, loud enough you're sure they can hear it outside. Your sister buries her face against your mother's shoulder, and you wrap your hand around the poker, pressing the tip against the faint ember glow of the hearth until it hisses. Then the second scream comes, closer this time. You feel it through the floorboards, a dull, heavy thud like someone slamming their shoulder into a door. Then another. Then a crash of splintering wood. Somewhere beyond the square, a hut has fallen. The wolves are inside. The first break, your father doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. He grips the handle of the poker until his knuckles pale, and he moves to the window, a narrow slit cut between warped planks, just wide enough for one eye. At first there's nothing, just mist, pale and twisting under a thin slice of moon. Then you see it, a shadow gliding low between huts, silent, too fast to be mistaken for anything human. You strain to follow, but before you can, a howl rips the air open again. This time so close you can taste it, hot and wild and sharp on the back of your tongue. Your father steps back from the window slowly, jaw set tight, and whispers just one word. Inside. The square erupts. It starts with a single shout near the old oak. Fire! You rush to the slit again, and now the square burns faintly with movement. Villagers stumble into the open, torches flaring, spears raised, pitchforks clutched so tight the handles splinter beneath their hands. Someone drags a cart into the center of the path, stacking wood and straw as quickly as they can. Flames lick the edges of their breath. And then the wolves come. Not one, not 3, 7. Their shapes leap into the torchlight, black against black, fur bristling, ribs sharp beneath winter-hollowed skin. Their eyes catch the fire, pale, glinting, unnatural, like cold stars dragged to earth. They move low, silent at first, until the first one strikes. It crashes into the cart, jaws clamping around a man's calf, dragging him down before his torch even falls. Screams spill into the air like boiling water. The fire catches straw, exploding bright against the frost, throwing wild shadows across the huts and across your shaking hands. The hut becomes a fortress. Your father slams the door bar into place and shoves a wooden stool beneath it for good measure. Stay away from the walls, he says, voice low but steady, his breath misting in the cold. If they test them, we push from the center. Your mother crouches low in the corner, rocking your sister gently, her lips moving in silent prayer. You sit by the hearth, poker ready, chest tight with breath you cannot steady. Outside, chaos swirls. You can hear the clash of wood on bone, the wet rip of fur tearing, the low, guttural growls beneath human screams. Then comes the sound you've dreaded since last night, scratching. Soft at first on the far wall behind the clay pot stacked with kindling. Then harder, sharper, claws dragging deep grooves into damp wood. You lunge toward the sound before you think, shoving the poker forward. It hits something solid, something that jerks away with a snarl so sharp it rattles in your bones. A thud follows, claws skittering off the stakes outside. You hear the wet sound of breath and retreating paws, but you know it isn't leaving. Not yet. The stewards fall. A shout rises from the square, louder than the rest, cutting through the storm of noise. The steward's voice, smooth even in panic. Hold the line, hold. It breaks off in a single terrible sound. A scream deep and ragged, gurgling halfway before it stops. You stare at your father. He doesn't look back. He just grips the poker tighter. Outside, the chaos sharpens into something different. No more orders. No more chance of unity, only raw panic. Boots thud past your door, villagers scattering toward their huts. Somewhere to your right, a torch drops into frozen straw, flaring bright for a moment before going out with a hiss. The square belongs to the wolves now. A new threat, and then, suddenly, silence. No howls, no shouts, no clash of wood and claw. You think it's over. You pray it's over. But then you hear it, the soft crunch of paws circling, slower this time, deliberate. One by one, the shadows regroup outside, drawn by the sound of frightened breaths behind thin wooden walls. They've learned. They're not breaking doors now. They're waiting. A low growl curls beneath the floorboards, so close it vibrates in your chest. Ash and teeth, your father leans close, voice barely above a whisper. Keep the fire alive. You feed the hearth the last handful of splintered wood, watching the flames crawl greedily up the blackened logs, painting the walls with faint, trembling light. Smoke coils into the air, clinging to your hair, your sleeves, your breath. The room is tight, heavy, and every sound outside seems louder than your thoughts. Somewhere near the coop, claws rake wood again, scraping until splinters crack and fall. You grip the poker so hard it burns against your palm, but your feet refuse to move this time. Not yet. Through the wall, you hear them breathing. 1, 2, 3. A fourth joins them, lower, heavier, dragging something over frost. You don't want to know what. And then from the edge of the forest, far beyond the huts, a howl rises deeper than before, older somehow, rolling like thunder through the frozen fields. Your father stiffens. That's not the same pack, he whispers. The night splits open, the wolves outside your hut fall silent. The growling stops. Even their breath vanishes from the cracks. And then the sound comes, not claws this time, but bones snapping somewhere beyond the tree line. The pack isn't hunting you anymore. Something is hunting them. The silence is unbearable. It presses against the hut like a second wall, heavier than wood, thicker than frost. The wolves are gone. You can feel it in the air, the way their breath no longer fogs through cracks in the planks, the way the scratching has stopped. But you do not feel safe. You feel watched. Your father leans slightly toward the window slit, his hand hovering near the poker, shoulders drawn tight like a bowstring. Your mother presses your sister's head against her chest, rocking without sound, as though motion alone could promise safety. Then it comes. A sound unlike anything you've ever heard. It starts deep, rolling under the earth, like a boulder breaking loose inside the frozen hills. A low, guttural moan carries over the treetops, rising slowly, stretching until it tears into something almost human, a scream, but not made by any mouth you know. The fire hisses as though it too wants to die. The empty square, your father signals for silence. You breathe shallow, keeping your chest still as you follow him to the window. The square lies below in fragile light, silvered by moon frost and scattered embers. Huts lean against their shadows like tired old men. The oak tree, the cart, the blacksmith's torches all stand untouched now, but you see nothing moving, not even the wolves. Their tracks mark the frost like dark threads winding between huts clustered near broken doors, circling coops and pens, but they end there. Abrupt, cut off mid-step. No blood, no carcasses, only absence. Your father mutters under his breath, voice so faint you almost miss it. They ran. The thing in the tree line at first, you think the fog is thickening, pale wisps curling low between the trunks at the forest's edge. But then you see it ripple. The shapes move wrong, heavy and slow, like something dragging itself through the mist, pulling weight the ground doesn't want to carry. Branches snap softly, one by one, as though the trees bend to let something pass. You hear wet sounds, tearing, crunching, dragging, carried faintly on the wind. Then the moonlight shifts. For an instant you see it. A shape taller than any man, hunched but vast, shoulders broad as a hut's roof beam, limbs too long, ending in claws that glint faintly as frost catches them. The face, or what you think is its face, flashes pale and hollow, eyes black pits drinking the torchlight. And then it vanishes again, swallowed by fog and trees. Your father curses softly and pulls the shutter closed, sliding the wooden bar tight across it. The villagers gather, a soft knock comes at the door, 3 short taps, One pause, then two more. The signal. Your father lifts the bar and eases the door open just enough to admit the blacksmith, his beard wet with frost, his hands trembling beneath the soot. "They're gone," he whispers, glancing over his shoulder. "All of them. I saw their tracks vanish into the trees, but not one came back out." Your mother grips his arm. "And the screams?" He hesitates, then shakes his head. "Not wolves." Behind him, two more figures appear, the baker's eldest son and the old woman who tends the well. Both look hollowed by fear, their breaths shallow, their faces pale in the dim light. "They'll come back," the boy insists. "Whatever's out there, it'll follow." The blacksmith exhales hard through his teeth. "If it wanted us, we'd be bones already. We can't fight what we can't see." Your father presses his palms against the table, leaning close, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. "Then we find out what it is." The council by firelight, you follow them into the square, where the villagers gather in a tight circle around a single torch driven deep into frozen ground. Faces flicker pale and sharp under the shifting light. Some hold spears, others clutches of salted rope, one or two a torch that shakes faintly in their grip. The steward is gone. Someone whispers they saw him running for the manor hill before the second scream. Your father steps forward, voice carrying just enough to hush the murmurs. "The wolves won't trouble us again," he says, "but something worse has found this valley." The old woman from the well draws a sign over her chest. "Not something worse," she whispers, "something older." The blacksmith spits into the frost. "Old or not, it bleeds like anything else." But the baker's son shakes his head. "No, it doesn't." Everyone turns to look at him, and you feel the air shift colder still. "I saw it," he says, voice shaking, barely audible over the wind. "I went out past the traps after the first scream. There was blood." He pauses, swallowing hard, eyes darting toward the forest. "But not theirs." Tracks that lead nowhere. He points toward the far side of the square, where frost glitters faintly beyond the torchlight. You follow him, boots crunching softly over frozen ground until you see it. A wide swath of churned earth, where something dragged one of the wolves across the yard and into the trees. The snow's broken, clumped, scattered with red. But where the trail should continue into the woods, it doesn't. It just stops, dead in the middle of the frost. You crouch closer, shivering as you notice deep gouges carved into the ground, long and parallel, as though claws dug trenches to resist being pulled. The tracks vanish into nothing. No scent, no sound, no trace. You rise slowly, glancing at your father. "What does that?" you whisper. He doesn't answer. The sound beneath the earth, the ground trembles. Just once, faintly, so soft you think at first it's your imagination. But then it comes again, stronger, rolling under your bare soles like distant thunder. You look down at the frost, watching tiny cracks split outward from your feet. Somewhere deep below, something moves. The torchlight sways as the wind rises suddenly, sharp and bitter, hissing between huts, carrying with it the stench of wet earth and rot. From the forest's edge, a low rumble answers. Not a growl, not quite a roar. Something deeper, hollow, ancient, like stone grinding against stone in the belly of the world. Your father grips your shoulder. "Inside," he says again, but his voice is softer now, strained, as though he already knows the walls won't matter this time. The hollow hills back in the hut, you crouch low near the hearth, poker in hand, but the fire does little to warm you. Outside, the villagers scatter to their homes, their hurried footsteps muffled by frost, shutters slamming tight one after another. The rumbling fades, but it leaves an echo in your bones, a vibration that won't stop, even when silence returns. In the distance, faintly, you hear the old church bell toll once. No one rang it. The night is silent again, but it's the wrong kind of silence. It isn't the quiet of safety, it's the quiet of prey waiting to be hunted. You sit by the dying hearth, hands buried beneath the thin wool blanket, the poker resting across your knees. The embers breathe faintly, smoke curling low to the ceiling beams, where frost creeps in jagged white veins. Your sister stirs against your mother's shoulder, mumbling in her sleep, but your mother doesn't hush her this time. She stares at the wall instead, her lips cracked and colorless, whispering prayers she no longer expects anyone to hear. Outside, the cold is deeper than before. The wind has stopped, and even the branches don't creak. The earth itself feels still, listening. The bell that shouldn't ring, the old church bell, tolls again, faint and hollow. One note only, carried through the frozen air, rolling across the village like a shroud. Your father rises, shoulders hunched, fingers tightening around the wooden poker until the splintered grip digs into his palm. He moves to the door and presses his ear to the frame. The bell tolls again, 2 slow, dragging beats, and then stops as if cut short mid-swing. No one goes near that bell at night, not since the plague winters. The blacksmith swore weeks ago the rope rotted through years back. You believe him. Your father pulls back from the door, his jaw clenched, breath shallow. "It's calling," he says softly, "but not for us." Shapes in the fog, you slip to the window slit, breath catching as frost bites the rim of the warped planks. The square lies below, washed in pale moonlight, the broken cart still tipped on its side, straw scattered like frozen rain. At first, nothing moves. Then you see it. A shadow slides through the fog between the huts, slow, deliberate, too tall to be human, too silent to be anything you know. The pale mist curls around it but never touches it, as though the air itself recoils from its shape. Your chest tightens as you watch it stop near the oak tree, where last night's blood has crusted black on the frost. The figure bends, lowering its long frame over the ground, claws dragging through the snow in strange, deliberate strokes. You squint, but it doesn't take, it carves. Symbols. Crooked, spiraled, shallow grooves that glint faintly under the moonlight. You can't read them, but your bones understand anyway. This isn't writing for people. The return of the wolves, a low howl rolls across the square, but it's wrong. You know the sound of wolves now, the sharp, cutting pitch of hunger carried on breath and frost. This is different. Lower, strained, almost broken. 3 shapes limp into view, ribs sharp beneath mangy fur, paws dragging grooves into the frozen dirt. You recognize the scars on one's flank from last night's fight, but the wound should have killed it. They move wrong. Too slow. Too stiff. When they stop beneath the oak, you see it clearly. Their eyes are pale, clouded, almost blind, yet they turn, perfectly in unison, toward the thing crouched in the frost. It does not look back at them. It doesn't need to. The blacksmith was wrong. This isn't a hunt. This is worship. The well awakens from somewhere behind the huts. A new sound rises, deep, hollow, wet. You glance toward the old well, its stones rimmed with frost, the rope hanging loose in the faint light. The sound comes again, louder, a heavy breath pulled from deep underground. And then the earth shakes. The villagers spill into the square one by one, carrying torches, spears, and salted ropes, drawn by the rumble beneath their feet. The blacksmith shoves through the crowd, face pale beneath soot and beard, his voice rasping like a rasp over steel. "It's under us," he hisses. "Under the well." The old woman from the church stumbles forward, clutching her shawl so tightly her knuckles crack white. "It's the hollow one," she says, voice breaking. "The thing they buried before the old plague. The priests chained it, salted the ground." You stare at her, shaking your head. "Chained what?" She looks at you then, eyes shining with fear so deep it steals her breath. The frost remembers. The shattered prayer your father pushes through the villagers and lifts his hand for silence, his voice steady but tight. "Whatever it is, we leave tonight. Pack what we can carry. Head for the marsh road." But before anyone can move, the bell tolls again, 3 sharp, splitting peals that make the ground tremble beneath your soles. The thing beneath the oak rises slowly, impossibly tall, its head nearly brushing the low clouds. The wolves sink to the ground at its feet, chests pressed flat into the frozen dirt, throats rumbling in a sound too low for human ears. Then the fog shifts and you see its face. Not pale, not hollow, missing. Where a face should be, there is only smooth black ice, cracked and glinting faintly under the thin moonlight. Beneath it, something pulses faintly, slow and deliberate, like breath trapped in frozen glass. The villagers fall silent as one. No one dares breathe. Then the well screams. A sound erupts from its depths, high and piercing, rolling through every hut, shaking the frozen roofs, splintering the air itself. The torches flicker violently, spitting embers into the frost. Chickens explode into a frenzy in their coops, and somewhere behind you a baby wails raw and thin. The blacksmith grabs your father's arm. "We can't run. The marsh road's frozen. The bridge won't hold. And if it follows, it will," your father says. His voice cracks on the last word. The villagers gather tighter, their shadows trembling against the huts, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell them what to do. The old woman mutters broken prayers under her breath. The baker's son clutches a torch so tightly his nails tear against the wood. The thing turns slowly toward the well, claws curling as frost climbs its limbs in jagged spirals. The rumbling grows louder beneath the earth. You feel it in your teeth, in your bones, in your breath. Then your father speaks the words you've dreaded since the first howl: "We can't stay here." And from somewhere deep within the well something answers. The night tastes of iron. Not the sweet tang of blood, but something older, heavier. Like the earth itself is rusting beneath the frost. You stand in the square, breath curling white into the air, the torchlight around you flickering like frightened eyes. Behind you, your mother clutches your sister close beneath her patched shawl, her lips moving silently. Beside her, the blacksmith grips his hammer with both hands, knuckles white, jaw locked. Your father scans the crowd of villagers, his shoulders squared despite the tremor in his chest. His voice cuts through the whispers, rough and low. "Take only what you can carry. We leave before the next toll." No one argues this time. The breaking of the bell, the words have barely left his mouth when the bell tolls once more. But this time the sound is wrong. It cracks mid-peal, shattering like glass struck by a hammer, splintering into sharp echoes that roll across the frozen valley. You hear wood splintering in the distance, the roof beams of the church groaning under the strain. Then silence. No final swing, no hollow fade, just silence so absolute you can hear your own pulse pounding in your ears. The old woman from the well falls to her knees in the frost, clutching a fistful of salt in her trembling hands. "It's broken," she whispers, voice rasping dry. "Nothing holds it now." The flight begins. You grab your sister's hand and follow your father as he pushes through the narrow lanes, guiding the crowd toward the southern edge of the village where the marsh road begins. The villagers move like shadows, hunched low, their breath clouding pale in the thin moonlight. The huts shrink behind you, fading into the mist, their crooked roofs dissolving into silver-gray shapes. Every creak, every snapping twig beneath your bare feet feels louder than thunder. The marsh lies ahead, black, frozen, endless. Thin reeds stand stiff in clusters, their tips rimmed with hoarfrost, shivering faintly in the icy breeze. The road itself is little more than packed dirt, half-eaten by frozen pools, its ruts filled with jagged shards of ice that glitter under the moonlight. Somewhere behind you, a baby whimpers. Its mother hushes it with trembling hands. "Faster," your father urges. "Stay close." The thing hunts halfway down the marsh road. You hear it. A low, wet sound like stone grinding against stone beneath the earth, muffled by layers of frost and soil. You glance back and see nothing but white mist clinging low to the ground, swallowing the crooked line of huts behind you. But then the fog shifts. A shape emerges, slow and deliberate, limbs moving wrong, bending backward where knees shouldn't bend, shoulders rolling like pulled on strings. Its head tilts as though listening, the smooth black surface of its faceless mask reflecting the torches ahead. And then, with no sound at all, it begins to follow. The villagers break into a run, boots hammering frozen dirt, clogs cracking against ice. Someone screams a short, sharp burst, and is hushed instantly by the blacksmith's roar. "Keep running." The marsh betrays the frozen earth groans beneath you, a long, low creak like an old door opening, and suddenly your foot plunges through thin ice into black water below. You wrench it free, gasping as the cold bites bone deep. A child behind you isn't so lucky. The ice collapses beneath him with a sharp crack, his scream slicing the night as he disappears waist-deep into the dark marsh water. Before anyone can pull him out, A hand grabs his wrist. No, not a hand. A claw. Long, skeletal fingers slick with black frost erupt from beneath the water, wrapping around the child's arm and dragging him under before his mother's scream can finish leaving her throat. The villagers scatter from the broken patch, stumbling into deeper frost, shoving one another blindly. And still the thing follows. The blacksmiths stand at the edge of the marsh. The blacksmith turns, swinging his hammer wide, sparks flying as it crashes against frozen stones. He shouts for the others to go, his broad back a wall between the villagers and the creeping figure in the mist. The thing stops, tilting its head again, studying him. The torchlight flickers across its body, revealing deep cracks in the black ice stretched over its frame, faint blue light pulsing beneath as though something burns inside. The blacksmith charges, hammer raised. You hear the impact, a sharp, ringing crack that echoes across the marsh. For a heartbeat, it seems he struck true. For a heartbeat, you dare to hope. Then the thing grips the hammer's shaft, twists, and pulls him forward into the fog. His scream is short, wet, final. The choice of fire panic breaks the villagers into chaos. Torches scatter, some vanishing into the marsh, others trampled underfoot. Your father grabs your arm, hauling you forward, his voice cutting through the wind. The bridge. You stumble toward the wooden crossing over the frozen stream, where the narrow planks stretch pale and slick in the moonlight. Behind you, the thing moves faster now, flowing through the fog like a shadow pulled by a tide. Your mother gasps, clutching your sister tighter, feet slipping on the frozen boards as she crosses. You shove her forward, your breath sharp and ragged, the sound of cracking wood beneath you loud as thunder in your ears. Someone shouts behind you, "Light it, burn the bridge." A torch arcs through the air, lands on the dry reeds by the bank, and the fire catches instantly, racing up the brittle stalks, snapping loud against the frozen silence. But before the flames can spread far, the thing steps into the light, and the fire bends away from it. The sound beneath the water, a deep rumble rises under the marsh, shaking the bridge, sending ripples across the black pools below. You hear muffled shrieks rising from the water, voices, countless voices, whispering and wailing all at once, carried up from the depths. The thing pauses, tilts its faceless head, and then everything goes silent again. The villagers freeze where they stand. No one breathes. Not even the wind dares move. Then the ice beneath your feet cracks like lightning. Into the frost your father grabs your hand, dragging you forward just as the first board snaps beneath someone's weight. A woman falls screaming into the dark below, her torch hissing out instantly. The others push harder, stumbling across the narrow planks, slipping, clawing at one another to keep from falling. The thing stops at the far bank, its claws curling slowly, faint cracks in its frozen mask glowing brighter now. It doesn't pursue, it only watches. You stumble onto solid ground, your lungs burning, legs trembling beneath you. When you turn back, the bridge is already sagging into the black water, splintered wood sinking beneath the ripples. The torches on the far bank are dim now, scattered in mist, and beyond them nothing. The huts, the oak, the bell, all swallowed by fog, and somewhere deep in the mist the thing still stands, waiting. The bridge collapses behind you with a final groan, swallowed by the black water beneath. The sound echoes into the mist like a scream smothered under ice. You stand on trembling legs, chest heaving, your frozen fingers locked around your sister's hand. Her breath comes sharp and fast, white clouds spilling from her lips as she clings to your side, silent, too afraid even to cry. The marsh lies behind you now, but no one dares to cheer. No one dares to speak. The thing is still out there, somewhere beyond the fog, somewhere behind the burned reeds and shattered planks, waiting. Your father stands at the front of the group, face pale beneath soot and frost, his jaw tight as his eyes scan the winding trail ahead. The marsh road ends here, dissolving into the ancient woods, a forest older than the village, older than the church bell, older than any name your people remember. The villagers gather close, clutching torches and scraps of firewood, their faces hollow with exhaustion and fear. Behind you, the faint glow of dying flames marks the place where the bridge once stood, and beyond that the fog breathes slow and steady, alive with silence. The trees that watch the forest rises before you, towering shapes crowned in frost, their black bark cracked and weeping sap thick as frozen pitch. The branches twist high overhead, sharp and bare, clawing at the pale moonlight bleeding through the clouds. It is too quiet here. No birds, no wind, no sound but your own ragged breathing and the crunch of frost beneath your boots. As you step beneath the first arch of leaning pines, you feel it instantly, the weight of the woods pressing close around you, as if the trees themselves are leaning down to listen. Their shadows stretch unnaturally long in the torchlight, bending across the frozen ground like dark roots searching for your feet. Your sister tugs at your sleeve, whispering so softly you almost miss it. They're watching us. You want to tell her it's only her fear talking, but when you glance up into the branches, you see it too. Dozens of pale shapes like frost-limbed birds perched high on the limbs still as stone, their heads tilted unnaturally far, unblinking. They don't move, not even when your torches pass beneath them. Bones in the snow, the blacksmith's apprentice walks ahead, carrying a spear cut hastily from a broken cart shaft, his breath ragged. He's barely past the first grove when he stops abruptly, torchlight spilling forward to reveal something half buried in the frost. At first you think it's driftwood, a pale trunk bleached by ice. Then you see the teeth, a human jaw frozen open in a silent scream, the skull cracked clean through as though split by an axe. The ribcage beside it has caved inward, the bones splintered like glass, each shard blackened with old frostbite. You kneel, fingertips brushing the frozen soil around it. The ground is disturbed here, footprints, dozens of them, frozen mid-step, twisting off into the woods as though the owners fled in panic. But they end abruptly, swallowed by snow no deeper than your hand. Your father stares down at the remains, his voice low and hoarse. They tried to run. The old woman with the salt pouch shuffles closer, clutching her rosary until her knuckles pale. Her breath rattles as she whispers, "These are the ones from the last winter, the ones who followed the marsh road." You glance at her sharply. "Last winter," she nods once, the motion small, brittle, almost broken. "They fled the same way we're fleeing now. None came back." The whispers between the trees, the villagers huddle closer, the air thick with breath and fear. But the silence of the forest swallows every sound before it can rise above your shoulders. Then faintly, you hear something new, a soft, steady clicking, like teeth knocking together in the cold. At first, you think it comes from the wind chattering through branches overhead, but then the sound shifts. It moves around you, circling the group, slow and deliberate, weaving between the frozen trunks. Your mother clutches your sister's shoulders, drawing her closer into the folds of her shawl. Your father raises a hand, palm out, and everyone freezes in place, holding their breath as the clicking grows louder. Then you hear another sound, a whisper. You can't catch the words, too low, too broken, but you know without knowing why that they aren't meant for you. They move between the trees, darting from trunk to trunk, climbing like smoke through the branches. The pale shapes perched above twitch once, twice, and then all at once they vanish into the canopy with a rush of wings that makes no sound at all. The whispers stop. The thing in the hollow, the trail narrows, curling toward a frozen stream at the forest's heart, where the ice glimmers faintly under thin moonlight. As you step closer, you see that the trees bend inward sharply here, their roots curling above ground like gnarled claws, forming a ring around a deep hollow at the stream's edge. Something's carved into the largest trunk, strange spirals and jagged marks you don't recognize, filled with soot-black resin that glistens wet beneath the frost. The symbols match the ones you saw etched beneath the oak back in the village. Your father grips your shoulder, his voice barely more than breath. "It came this way." Before you can answer, the ice beneath the hollow groans. A single crack runs across the frozen stream, sharp and clean, splitting the silence like lightning. You stagger back as shadows beneath the ice begin to shift, slow at first, then faster, like something deep below is stirring from sleep. The villagers back away in panic, their torchlight shaking wildly across the dark ring of trees. The old woman begins to chant broken prayers through cracked lips, but her voice drowns beneath a sudden roar, low, hollow, endless, rising from under the frozen water. Then you hear it, a breath. Not the sharp, living kind that mists against the cold, but something ancient and endless, drawn through lungs you cannot see, pulled from a chest deep beneath the frost. The frozen stream shudders violently, frost cracking in jagged veins, and you see pale hands press upward from beneath the ice. Long, thin, jointed wrong. The villagers scatter into the forest. Nowhere left to run, you grab your sister's hand and follow your parents as they tear through the frostbitten undergrowth, branches clawing at your tunic, thorns scraping your bare arms raw. Behind you, torches fall into the snow, their flames hissing out one by one. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something moves faster than you can run. You hear it breaking branches, tearing through the frost, sliding between trunks like smoke drawn on wind. You don't look back, you can't. The whispers return, closer now, inside your ears, inside your bones. And above them, rising like thunder breaking through the clouds, comes the deep toll of the bell, not from the village, not from any tower, but from somewhere below, echoing up through the frozen earth. You stumble, falling to your knees, dragging your sister with you. The ground beneath you trembles, the frost splitting open in jagged lines that crawl toward the hollow behind you. Your father hauls you upright, his grip iron, his voice sharp. Don't stop, don't listen, keep moving. You run until your lungs burn, until your legs threaten to give way beneath you. But the sound follows, the whisper, the clicking, the tolling bell beneath the ground. Somewhere far behind, someone screams your name, and then the forest swallows it whole. The forest grows darker the deeper you go, until even the torchlight feels thin and brittle, breaking against the weight of shadows. The cold is heavier here, clinging to your bones, sliding like wet glass beneath your skin. You and the others move without speaking, breaths shallow, steps muffled by frost and dead pine needles beneath your bare feet. Behind you, the marsh and its whispers have vanished into the fog, but you feel them still, clinging to your shoulders like a weight you can't shake. Your sister walks beside you, her small hand locked around your sleeve, refusing to let go. Ahead, your father leads, jaw set hard, his torch trembling faintly though his hand stays steady. Then, through the tightly woven trunks, you see it. An open space. The silent settlement, the forest thins suddenly, giving way to a wide hollow buried deep beneath the pines. And there, half hidden under frost and fallen branches, lies what once might have been a village. Low huts sag beneath their own roofs, beams rotted and collapsed beneath weightless years of snow. A well stands crooked at the center, its stones black with lichen, its rope snapped long ago and frozen into a brittle spiral. It feels ancient, older than your own home, older than the church bell, older than any story told by firelight. But something is wrong. The huts aren't empty. Shapes sit in the doorways and windows, still and slumped, their outlines pale in the moonlight. You think they're statues at first, carved from stone and left to weather, but when your torchlight touches one, you see skin. Skin stretched thin over bone. Bodies, dozens of them, frozen where they sat, curled around bowls of grain turned to dust centuries ago. A mother hunches over a cradle. Two children clutch each other's hands, lips cracked and pale, frozen mid-breath. They died sitting upright, waiting for something, or hiding from it. The marks on the walls. Your father moves carefully to one of the nearest huts, ducking beneath the sagging frame. You follow close behind, holding your sister against you. Inside, the air is colder than outside, so cold it burns your throat with each breath. Along the walls, strange marks are carved deep into the wood, spirals, crosses, crude shapes of hands pressed flat with open palms. Dark resin fills the grooves, hardened and cracked, glittering faintly like glass beneath frost. And then you see words scratched deeper than the rest, scrawled desperately across every surface of the hut in jagged strokes. Don't listen to them. Beside it, more words, barely legible beneath black frost. They come from below. Your breath falters. The cradle, a sound draws your attention, faint, like something soft shifting against wood. You turn toward the cradle in the corner, your torchlight spilling over a small figure frozen beneath thin linen. The baby is still, its tiny face pale, waxen, preserved by frost. But someone carved something into the wood of the cradle, words etched so deep the splinters curl outward around the letters. Take salt to your grave. The old woman behind you clutches her pouch tighter, whispering something sharp and fast under her breath, her cracked lips trembling. Close the door, she hisses. Close it before, then you hear it. The sound beneath a hollow thud beneath the frozen ground. Then another, and another. The well in the center of the settlement shudders suddenly, a brittle length of rope still hanging over its lips snapping loose and falling into the darkness below. You all turn toward it at once, torches shaking, breaths caught in your throats. From deep within the well comes a sound, wet, soft, like something breathing through water. Your father pushes you back, his arm across your chest. Stay behind me, he says, his voice low, rough. The blacksmith's apprentice edges forward, torch raised high. He leans over the rim of the well and whispers, "There's something moving down there." A hand shoots up from the darkness, bone white and slick with frost, clawing at the air. The apprentice doesn't even have time to scream before it seizes his wrist and yanks him down. The torch clatters across the stones as his body vanishes into the black, his cries cut short by a wet tearing sound below. The awakening the ground shakes beneath you, cracks racing through the frozen dirt, splitting the hollow wide open. The villagers scatter, shouting, dropping torches into the frost as the earth groans louder than thunder. From beneath the well, something vast begins to rise. A column of black ice punches upward, shattering stone, spraying shards into the air like broken glass. Inside the ice, faint shapes twist and press against the surface. Faces, hundreds of them screaming silently, their mouths open wide beneath frozen water. And behind them something darker still moves. The same thing that has haunted the marsh. The same thing that whispered through the woods. The thing that bends fire away and bellows through earth and bone. The last stand your father seizes a fallen torch and thrusts it deep into the nearest hut's wall. The dry timber catches instantly, fire racing up the beams, light pouring into the settlement. "Run," he shouts. "Into the trees now." You grab your sister and pull her close, following your mother as she tears across the frostbitten ground, weaving between huts, past the frozen dead whose hollow eyes glint in the firelight. Behind you, the black ice cracks open, spilling a tide of pale, thin-limbed things that drag themselves up from the shattered ground. Their hands bend wrong, their faces are featureless hollows, and the sound they make is not screams but soft, endless clicking. The villagers fight with fire, with hammers, with sharpened wood, but every torch snuffs out as soon as it nears the creatures. One by one, their lights fail. You run. You do not look back. Into the pines, the last hut bursts into flame behind you, throwing a wave of heat against your frozen cheeks as you plunge back into the forest. Your sister's hand is slick with sweat despite the cold, her breath ragged and wheezing in your ear. Branches whip against your face. Frost crunches beneath your feet, and somewhere behind you, the clicking follows, faster now, carried on the rising wind. Your mother stumbles, but your father hauls her upright, his strength refusing to falter even as the shadows close in behind you. At last the trees thin, opening to a slope overlooking the distant valley. Below, your village lies hidden beneath fog and frost, the crooked rooftops dark and silent under the pale moon. Your father stops, chest heaving, and looks back toward the burning settlement deep within the forest. His torch sputters, threatening to die. The clicking stops. The forest goes silent once more. The bell without sound from somewhere beyond the marsh. Far off in the distance, you hear it, the faint toll of the church bell. 1, 2, 3, but no one rang it. Your sister buries her face against your chest, sobbing quietly into your tunic. Your mother holds her closer, whispering prayers into her tangled hair, the salt pouch clutched tight in her shaking hand. Your father grips your shoulder, his voice low, steady despite everything. "We don't go back." You nod, swallowing the bitter taste of frost on your tongue. The villagers gather in silence at the tree line, watching as the forest behind you glows with fire, the black smoke rising into the pale sky like a warning to anyone left alive. Somewhere below, the well waits. Somewhere beneath it, something stirs still. But tonight you've survived. And in this place, survival is all there is.